back in March, I believe it was. Well, the first one was before I think President Biden brought out the IRA, and it was an agreement, I believe, from the federal government to pay about $500 million of the construction costs of this new plant under the Strategic Investment Fund, the SIF program of ISED. And at that time, the Minister of Industry said, this is great news for Canadian jobs. Now, subsequent to that, when the IRA from President Biden came in, there was another contract that the government signed after that with Volkswagen, as we all know, for Southwest Ontario, which is another contract of $778 million of federal government subsidy to subsidize the building of that plant, and another $15 billion of subsidy for the battery assembly, not manufacturer. These are assembly plants. And just so people are clear, these are assembly plants that right now are not manufacturing batteries, but are actually assembling batteries for EVs, of which 80% of the parts for EV batteries in the world right now are actually manufactured in China. So these parts will be coming over to Canada and put into this plant to be assembled, which into batteries, which would then go, in most cases, into the U.S. where the cars will be assembled. And contrary to assertions that the minister made today and others have made, the Conservatives have actually not said whether we support or don't support these, because we haven't seen the contracts. And it's hard to make a judgment on whether or not we have a good deal when you haven't seen the contracts, particularly contracts that require $15 billion of taxpayer subsidy. So in essence, what we have is a secret contract that has some sort of job commitments in it, but clearly not job commitments that require Canadians to be hired, since the ambassador from Korea is saying they're going to bring in 1,600 people from South Korea to assemble a battery primarily manufactured in China and assembled here to go to the U.S., to be assembled in vehicles which will be put together in the U.S. and presumably most of them sold in the U.S. So in the absence of having the details of that contract, it's impossible for taxpayers to understand whether or not there is a contract that compels Stellantis and their subsidiary now in Windsor to actually hire Canadians, because one would think if you're going to give that level of subsidy that you would actually put in the contract that the job commitments are for Canadian jobs. So we are here now to discuss doing an urgent meeting on several meetings, I think, that need to be to get to the bottom of this issue of why it is that a contract was signed that allows a Korean car company to bring in workers from South Korea rather than hiring Canadians, as has the ambassador for South Korea has said publicly that they will do. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to, just to frame the discussion, move a study motion if I could, and I believe the clerk has a copy of it, and I'll read the motion in. So the motion reads as follows. Given that the Government of Canada gave a multi-billion-dollar subsidy for an EV battery manufacturing facility in Windsor, Ontario, and that in recent days it has been revealed that as many as 1,600 jobs will be going to foreign workers instead of Canadian workers, the committee undertake a 6-meeting investigation to determine how the Government of Canada structured the deal that prioritizes foreign workers over Canadian jobs and paychecks, and that the committee hears testimony from the Minister of Industry for 2 hours, the Minister of Finance for 2 hours, who has obviously been very vocal on this, the Minister of Employment and Social Development Canada, the Mayor of Windsor, the Parliamentary Budget Officer, officials from the Department of Industry, the CEO of Nexstar, Dennis Lee, Unifor National President Lana Payne, and all other witnesses deemed relevant by the committee, and the committee order the full unredacted contract with Stellantis LG regarding Nexstar EV battery manufacturing facility in Windsor, Ontario. All documents related to government funding and Canadian job creation at the proposed factory, the labour market impact assessment application from Stellantis, and the government's response, and that these documents be produced within 7 days of this motion being adopted. So for the purpose of framing the debate, and I'm sure there'll be some discussion about from various parties on elements of that, and we're putting it on the table as a starting point of, as we always do in this committee, as a collegial committee, to discuss how we can go about discussing this urgent thing. And I don't think it can wait until the new year or after we're done C27, which won't be until into the new year, because this issue is happening now. There's 130 people, according to the public reports, now working on this project, and the company itself has already said that 100 of them, and in fact, Minister Wilkinson has said 100 of them, are from South Korea already working on this project. So most of the employment to date is not South Koreans who are residents of Canada. They are South Koreans that have come here from South Korea as the starting point of this 1,600 person hiring that the ambassador for South Korea says that Stellantis is doing. So I'll leave it to that for now, Mr. Chair, and turn it over. I know there's a speakers list to others who want to make an intervention.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Perkins. So we have a motion on the floor, and I recognize MP Massé.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and apologies, I'm a few blocks away. I have a cold, so I don't want to come into the same room as everybody else. I support this motion with some amendments, and I'll get to my amendments later just to scope it a little bit better with regards to where we need to get to. I think one of the most important things to recognize here is that I do support the investment that's taking place, and just outside of my riding of Windsor West, you know, I've come to this place back in the year 2002 trying to get a green auto strategy done. Actually, in 2004, we actually tabled a plan with Dr. David Suzuki and CAW.
MP Massé, just 1 second. Your sound has faded. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's on your end, MP Massé. Okay, now it seems to be working. You're back.
All right, there. Yeah, I'm sure that it was more pleasurable when you couldn't hear me, but at any rate, I will resume with saying that basically, you know, I came to this place in 2002, and one of the reasons was for a green auto strategy. We watched many jobs lost in Windsor in Ontario, when Canada was number 2 in the world in automotive manufacturing, and we now slipped to 8th. And so I support this project going forward. But there's been a lot of concerns raised, not only just the Swiss one, but also the Volkswagen one. And my concern resides on the transparency and accountability file of this. And so this, you know, came about in the renegotiations. Most recent one was related to the Investment Reduction Act of the United States. So for myself, this is critical in terms of having the opportunity to make sure that we're going to get the most out of the jobs here. And the story has changed even the last number of hours. So there was originally one position that was talked about. Now there's hundreds. And there's a lack of supports in the community that are very important for the amount of workers that are supposed to be brought in. That hasn't even really been discussed too much to this point. So what I would like to do is amend the motion by deleting. I don't believe that we need to hear from, at this point in time, from Unifor National President Lena Payne. I would rather have Canada's Buildings Trades Unions, Sean Strickland, present instead, the Minister of Immigration, the Minister of Trade, the Ambassador to Korea, because as was noted by Mr. Perkins, the Ambassador came down to Windsor, and he came down to Windsor, and either, you know, the Ambassador had intentions, or we don't know what was taking place, but the Windsor Police tweeted out 1,600 potential people coming in. And so I don't think the Ambassador to Korea actually comes to Windsor to vacation. He was here for a particular reason, and we'd like to have that testimony in front of ourselves. And we'd also believe that that would be important. I don't believe we need the mayor of Windsor at this point in time as well. This is a federal contract that is a very important. And, perhaps in the future, the province might be invited as well. That's a possibility. But I'll conclude my comments right now so we can kind of move on this. I think that shedding light is very important for a national auto policy that I've advocated for many years. And I believe that, Canadians do want to see us transition and do want to be part of those things that are necessary for our future. And the best way to do that is to have transparency for people. And that will build the public confidence that's necessary. So the plant has already had a little bit of an issue with regards to there was a stalling to actually renegotiate. The government's had 2 negotiation points that have taken place, and I think it's reasonable to get the answers that are necessary right now and to ensure that, every single possibility is done. And it's important to note that when, we have foreign labor that comes in, say, for the agricultural sector, that the company pays for that foreign labor. It's not paid or subsidized by the Canadian taxpayers. And this is where I think people are a little bit concerned with what's taking place. And more importantly, it was never talked about. When we had the announcements, the ribbon cuttings, and a number of times there's been a lot of political people that have taken credit for what really is the workers that have actually saved our auto industry by our quality with Unifor and our commitment and the Unifor negotiations that have actually created the opportunities for investment. That's really where things are. And the fact of the matter is that the government's response to the Inflation Reduction Act of the United States has been one of just to match that, but also without the transparency that they provide in the United States. The United States has a much more transparent process for that. And so we need to keep that in mind, because it's important about this plant is not only the work that's being done to build it, but also the workers later on that will be in there, and to have the full confidence of the Canadian public. So I thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak, and hope that we can actually improve this situation right now, because it is worthwhile.
Merci, Monsieur Massé. Before I yield the floor to other MPs, you've moved an amendment, Mr. Massé, to the motion. Would you mind repeating, maybe with a little more clarity, the precise terms of your amendment? Because now the committee will have to debate your specific amendment.